Today I have for you Unit 6, Plant Structure. Today's lesson we will be getting into the structure of plants and then a little bit of physiology of what each section of a plant does and how it helps out the plant in total. As we go through today's lesson, you will notice that the PowerPoint that I have accompanying this video is titled Unit 6 Plant Structure Interactive. So what that means is that I don't want you just writing down everything I say, and then everything I say may or may not be on your PowerPoint. The PowerPoint that I have attached with this video has some words missing that the video will show you. And so as we're going through the video, I want you guys to be writing down the missing information that is not covered in your PowerPoint. So again, today is Unit 6. We're going to be going over plant structure. We're also going to be getting into a little bit of photosynthesis and respiration here at the end. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and let's begin. So today's lesson, again, is going to be an interactive plant structure. Today's lesson is going to be an interactive PowerPoint. And so I want you guys to follow along with me and pay attention as we're going through filling out the information that is missing on your PowerPoint. And then if you have any questions, message me on Schoology or email me, and then I will be more than happy to get back with you. I do apologize for how long it took me to get this information out to you guys. I just had to get everything together. That way I could get it out to you. So the standard for today's lesson is going to be relating the structure of each of the major plant organs and tissues to the physiological processes that they carry out. Main guiding question for today, I'm not going to read the whole slide. You guys know how to read. So how are plant organs organized into systems that carry out the basic physiological processes in plants? And one of the main physiological processes is photosynthesis. So how do you guys think this is done? All right, so next up, we have a guess and check. What I want you guys to do on your own sheet of paper or on your notes page, whatever it is that you're using, copy down this table here on the right. And what I want you to do is fill out the table with the following choices, either stem, flower, leaf, root, fruit, or seed. What I want you to do is look over here at the fruit and vegetable section. You have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 different fruits or vegetables. What I want you to do is each one of those fruits or vegetables, tell me what part of the plant it is with one of the 6 words on the left side. So go ahead, pause the video, and then whenever you're finished writing down what you think that part of the plant is, click play, and we shall resume. All right, so for your answers on the guess and check, again, I'm not going to read all of them. You guys know how to read. The cabbage is part of the flower. Your carrot is actually the root. Your zucchini and your tomatoes are actually the fruit of their plants. So, plant organs, how we classify the different plant organs into the different types of plants that they belong to. Yes, I know many plants look very similar, but just as we learned last week with classification of animals, plants are classified into 2 different groups. We have angiosperms, which is flowering plants, and we also have gymnosperms, which means they don't have flowers. Within angiosperms, there are 2 different types. You have a monocot, which is a mono or a single seed part, and then we also have a dicot, di meaning 2 seed parts. Within our gymnosperms, again, there are no flowers, and the 2 different types here we have are ferns and conifers. Thinking about conifers, the word cone. They are cone producers. First 3 letters are the exact same for both. That's an easy way to recognize it. Conifer, it means it has a cone. Again, angiosperms, monocot and dicot, gymnosperms, ferns and conifers. All right, so now let's get into each of the different parts or organs of the plant itself. How are each one, how are they used together? How are, goodness, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. How does each one correlate with the other? How does each one help the other one out? How do they tie into one another? So first we got to know what each one does. So your roots, they absorb water and nutrients, and they also anchor the plant. They support the above ground part of the plant, and they also store the food. So even though we don't see the roots, they do a whole lot behind the scenes. If it wasn't for the root, the plant would probably just be falling over and it might not get a whole lot of nutrients that it needs. So be thankful for the pieces of the plant that you don't see. They're one of the more important pieces of the plant. So, the process of photosynthesis requires sunlight, water, and nutrients. If you don't have all three of those, sunlight, water, and nutrients, you cannot do the process of photosynthesis correctly. You can try, but you won't quite get it. It's like a perfect chemical reaction. So, answer the following two questions on your sheet of paper and then pause the video, answer the following two questions, and then go ahead and move on. What is the ultimate source of energy for plants? And how might these root functions help the process of photosynthesis? All right, moving right along here. Next up, we have a sagittal cut of a root. You guys probably don't know what the word sagittal means. What that means is this root has been sliced in half. That way you're seeing the two different sides of its body from the inside. So what you're looking at here is going to be just the inside of the root. And so you see the many different layers that it has. You have your epidermis, which is going to be the outside, your cortex, phloem, and xylem. Probably don't know what those words mean right now. If you do, great. If not, we'll learn them in a bit. Just showing you guys an example of what a root looks like cut in half. That way you can see the inside of it going out. So next up, we have the stem. The stem is going to be responsible for the size and shape of your plant. Whether how tall you are, whether how short you are, whether how wide you are, or how skinny of a plant you are, all depends on your stem. The stem, one of its main jobs is to support the leaves. It helps position them and receive as much sunlight as they possibly can. One of the main components of photosynthesis, again, is sunlight. How are you going to complete that process if you don't have enough sun? Next up, the stem is going to move water, minerals, and food throughout the entire plant, all the way from the roots to the leaves to the flowers. Or if you're a gymnosperm, no flowers. Your stem is going to be your main highway for transportation of water and minerals and food. And last up, green stems produce food through photosynthesis. This is not to say that brown stems don't use photosynthesis, just that green stems produce more chlorophyll. More chlorophyll you have, the more able you are to do the process of photosynthesis. Got another question for you for this slide here. Photosynthesis requires the input of sunlight. How might these stem functions help the process of photosynthesis? So, thinking again, the ability to support the leaves and position them, and then the ability to move water and other minerals throughout the entirety of the plant. How might the stem functions help the process of photosynthesis? Here we have a picture of basically a twig. You get to see the different parts of the stem. You see where your leaf blades are held. You see where the stem is indeed actually growing, the terminal bud and then the axillary bud there at the top of your picture. You get to see where the leaf breaks off and where new leaves are being formed. And basically you just get to see the different parts of your stem. So yes, while the stem just looks bland, basic, there are actually many different parts that we will get into the further you get into the study of plants. Next up, we have leaves. Leaves basically really only have one job: produce food for the plants. That's what they're there for. They're there to make the plant look pretty. They're not really there for structural support. They're there to produce food for the plant. They are designed to efficiently collect light and use that light to make energy for the plant. So again, leaves, they are important. They basically only have one job, but it is a very important job. They are production factories for the plant overall. So, one more question on this slide for the leaves. How might these leaf functions help with the process of photosynthesis? Think about it. Leaves are designed efficiently to collect light. Sunlight is often written down as being the first component for the chemical reaction needed to do photosynthesis. Makes you wonder, If you didn't have sunlight, what would happen? On this page, we just have a very large leaf, and going over a little bit of the anatomy of a leaf. Your petiole is going to be the backbone, the stalk of the leaf that's actually connected to your stem. The midrib is just the extended petiole throughout the leaf, going from the base of it all the way to the tip. The blade of the leaf is normally what we think of as the leaf. That's the fan portion of the leaf. And then veins are going to be the small tube structures that run throughout the leaf that carry the water and other nutrients from the stem to the leaf. The next one of our structures that we will be talking about is going to be flowers. Now, when you have your flowers on your plants, there are going to be two different portions of the flower that we look at. You have your female portion of the flower, and you also have your male portion of the flower. We're going to start off with the female portion of the flower. So, on the female portion of the flower, there are three different sections. Well, excuse me, let me rephrase that. The pistil is known as the female portion of the flower. That pistil includes three different sections: your ovary, your stigma, and your style. The ovary, just like in people and other animals, the ovary is the portion of the body that produces the egg. Your stigma is going to be the sticky part that collects or catches the pollen. And then your style is a rod-shaped middle part that is going to be the tube that allows the pollen to travel from the stigma to the ovary. So your style is a rod-shaped middle part that has a swollen base, the ovary. I'll show you an example of this on the next slide. Your ovary produces the egg. Your stigma is the sticky part that catches pollen. And then your style is the rod-shaped middle part that has a swollen base, the ovary. So I want you guys to be paying attention to the right side of the screen here, not the left. That's going to be the male part of the flower, right side of the screen. So here you see your ovary, the swollen bottom part of the style. Then you have your stigma up here. Your stigma is going to be, again, the sticky part that catches the pollen. This little little orange balls. Your style is going to be the tube from which your pollen can travel between the stigma and then the ovary. On the last slide, this was known as the pistil, not the carpel. Both words are describing the same thing, just a difference in how it's written and who you're asking. Pistil and carpel are going to be they're going to be synonymous. Two different words that mean the same thing as far as what we're looking at on the flower. So again, on this page, you saw that the pistil was the female part of the flower, and then on this slide, you see that all three are going to be part of the carpel. So on this slide, we will see the pollination and fertilization in a flower. So first off, we have mature pollen grains that's coming from the male part of the flower. This right here is going to be the inside of what a pollen looks like. Your pollen is going to contain two different parts of a cell. You have sperm cells, and you also have what's called a tube cell nucleus. Sperm cells, that's going to be the male portion of how of sexual reproduction. And then your tube cell, you won't need to know much about it now. You'll get into it a lot later if you continue on in botany or other plant sciences. But for right now, sperm cell, that's what we need to worry about. That's what pollen is. It's basically the sperm from the plant. Sperm cell travels to the stigma. Stigma is going to catch it because it has a sticky top at the top. It has a sticky top. That way it can catch the pollen. Travels down the style, which is going to be the tube that leads to the ovary. And then down here at the base of the style, we have the ovary. Inside of your ovary, you have what is called your ovule, and that's going to be where your zygote is produced. That's going to be the inside where the egg and the actual sperm meet, and that's where the zygote or the baby will be produced. All right, now that we have covered the female part of the flower, now we're going to be covering the male section. Again, on the female flower, the entire structure is known as your pistil. That's going to include three parts: your ovary, your stamen, and then your stigma. Your ovary, your style, and your stigma. The male section of the flower is going to be called the stamen, and it includes two parts: your filament and then your anther. Your filament is the long stalk that holds up the anther, and then your anther is going to be the sac-like structure that contains pollen. As we learned on the last picture, or on the last slide, going over pollination and fertilization of plants, your pollen is going to include more than just the sperm. It includes some other types of cells known as tube cell nuclei that you don't need to know about right now. So all we need to focus on is pollen grains contain the male sperm. As you see here on this picture, the pistil and then the stamen are actually quite close together on the flower. What we need to pay attention to and recognize is where they're positioned and then how they're positioned within the flower. The stamen does not contain a bulb or the ovary down at the bottom. Here on the stamen, what you're going to have is the filament. The filament is going to be the long stalk that holds up your anther. The anther is going to be the little flat head there at the top of it. Your pistil is again going to contain three parts: your ovary down at the bottom, then your stigma is going to be the top part that has a sticky head, that way it can that way the pollen can attach to it. And then you have your style, which is going to be the long tube that serves as a transport between the stigma and the ovary. All right, so moving on to the different types of flowers. We have two different types of flowers. We have complete flowers and incomplete flowers. What you're going to notice as you're going through the slides is I do not have a slide for incomplete flowers. I'm going to give you the definition and an example of a complete flower. An incomplete flower is going to be anything that does not meet and check off all the boxes to be a complete flower. So, a complete flower, they have both male and female parts. Flowers that have sepals, petals, pistils, and stamens. As you look here at this picture, this is going to be a complete flower. It has sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. Your sepals are going to be the green leaves that protect the flower before it opens, and then your petals are going to be the colorful leaf-like structures that attract animals and insects as pollinators. So, flowers don't just look pretty so humans can go ooh and ah at them. They do serve a purpose in nature. That is how hummingbirds, bees, wasps, different species of fly, this is how the flower will actually get its pollen to go to other plants. It attracts animals and insects, and they will take the pollen from one plant and they will go and take it to another plant. So again, complete flowers have both male and female parts. Flowers that have sepals, petals, pistils, and stamens. So if you do not have all four sections, you are not going to be a complete flower. You are going to be what is called an incomplete flower. Again, here is an example, another picture of a complete flower. You have your sepals, which are going to be the leaves that protect the flower before it opens. Your petals, which are going to be the colorful leaf-like structures, but they're not actually leaves themselves. You're going to have your ovary, which is going to be part of your pistil. And then you also have your anther and then your stamen, which are part of, your anther and filament, which are part of the stamen. All right, the next two sections that we will cover are going to be fruit and cones. These are two different methods used by two different types of plants in order for that their seeds may be dispersed among the earth so that their species can continue on after they've already gone through fertilization. So with a fruit, this is going to be on flowering plants. When the eggs have been fertilized, the ovary and surrounding tissue begin to enlarge and they become what is known as a fruit. If you look here at this picture, the ovary and then the pistil of the female part of the plant was once green. Now it's become a little brown. What you're seeing here is how the ovary has swelled to an enlarged state, and then your old stigma and style are now here. Your stigma, which is once up here, is shrunk down. Your style has shrunk down as well. Again, because your ovary is expanding. And then inside of that now formed fruit, your eggs become your seeds. You don't get to see the fertilized eggs here in the picture, but on the inside, the seed of a fruit is the fertilized egg of that plant. Next up, we have cones, or for gymnosperms and conifers. These are plants that do not have flowers at all, but yet they do still have seeds. Excuse me. So for what we normally look at as a cone, normally that's going to be the female part of the cone. There are male cones as well, but we don't see them as often. There are just a lot more female cones on conifer plants. The female cones are normally up around the top 2/3 of the tree, and then the male cones are right around the lower branches. That way they can release their pollen. Wind picks it up as the pollen travels on the wind. The female cones pick it up here at the top. So normally when we see a cone on the ground looking like this, all out and open, it has already released its seeds. Most of the time, if you see a cone that is not open yet, that means its seeds has not been released. That means that female portion of the cone has not actually been fertilized yet. So if you see a cone closed, it means it hasn't been fertilized. If you see it open, the portion that we normally use as like ornaments, that means it has already been fertilized and has already released its seeds. All right, so next up, we're going to go over plant tissues. We have 4 different tissues for our plant. We have what's called meristematic, ground tissue, dermal tissue, and then vascular tissue. So first up, meristematic. This is cells that divide for life of the plant, and they can give rise to all plant structures. So your meristematic is basically like a stem cell in humans, to where they are very, what's the word I want to use? They're easily changed. Oh, no, I can't think of the word. I'm sorry. But they're very that's the word, versatile. Meristematic cells are very versatile. They can become any plant cell that you need inside of your plant, and they can do it all. They're the handyman of the plant cell. Next up, you have your ground tissue or your ground cells, and they form the bulk of the leaf. I know it sounds weird. The ground, you would think that the ground tissue forms the bulk of the root, but that's just the name and style of the tissue that makes up the bulk of your leaves. What your ground tissues do is they make sugar, and they're used for storage and support. Next up, we have dermal tissue, and this is going to be on the outside of your cell, of your plant, and then this dermal tissue is going to be used for protection for the plant from either the environment or from other factors such as insects or animals that like to eat plants, just anything to help the plant survive. Yes, it may not be a whole lot of protection, but it's better than nothing. Next up, you have your vascular tissue. This is going to be your xylem and phloem. and they're going to help out with transport and support. Your xylem and phloem are mostly going to be found in your stem and in your roots. Transport and support of water and other material that go throughout the plant, and then support of the plant itself in the stem. They help it stand up and not get knocked down quite so easily, even though we humans not like to knock down plants for fun and then build malls. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. Next up, we have different plant structures. Excuse me. We have the cambium, which produces new xylem and phloem cells. We have guard cells, which are on your leaves, and they surround the stomata to open and close it. Your stomata is found on the leaf itself, on the bottom of the leaf. A stomata is a hole in the dermal tissue, and it is responsible for gas exchange. Your xylem is tissue that carries water and nutrients from the roots to the leaves. The direction that the xylem flows is up in the plant. So your xylem and phloem work together, but xylem is going to start at the bottom and go up in that direction. Your phloem, however, is tissue that carries food produced from the leaf to the rest of the plant. So your phloem is going to start at the top and then work its way down. And then your seed, again, is the fertilized egg. Next up, we have 4 different physiological processes of the plant. We have reproduction, transpiration, photosynthesis, and cellular respiration. In reproduction, we have your stamen releases its pollen. Pollen is carried by the wind, gravity, animals, and insects to the stigma of another flower. Pollen moves from stigma down through the style, depositing sperm in the ovary. When the sperm has been deposited in the ovary, fertilization has occurred. And then the ovary and surrounding tissue grow to become a fruit, and the fertilized eggs become seeds. Next up, we have transpiration. Water moves through the plant to evaporate through holes in the leaves. These holes are called stomata, which are surrounded by guard cells, which open and close the holes. Photosynthesis, the process we all know and love. It is a process where plants take in water and carbon dioxide to produce sugar and oxygen. Cellular respiration is a process where animals and plants take in oxygen and sugars to produce carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are opposite processes. The reactance of one is the product of the other one. So I'll show you a little picture here in a second, but photosynthesis and cellular respiration, think of them as being 2 sides of the same coin. What you need for one, the other one produces. What the other one produces is what is used to begin the other one. So, if you look here at the chemical equations, this is going to be photosynthesis. We need carbon dioxide, and we need water and sunlight. And then what is produced? Sugar, glucose, and oxygen. When we look at this mitochondria, which does cellular respiration, we use sugar and we use oxygen, and what we produce is carbon dioxide and water. ATP is energy.